What's up, everybody? Do you sometimes feel like you just keep pushing yourself and you just don't know when is enough? Well, you've come to the right place because in today's episode, Danny and I are going to be talking about when is enough. Welcome to the Existential Stoic Podcast. This is episode 117. I'm Randy. That's my buddy Danny. How you doing, Danny?
Doing well, Randy. What's up? Yeah, I think this is a good topic. I think because I struggle with this all the time. You get caught. You want to. It's like you always want more, right? So it's like, but you can work yourself to death doing that too, and not do anything else. And it's like, how do you balance? It's about balance, I guess, but it's hard, right, to find that balance in life.
Well, it's our innate nature to kind of want more because if we didn't, we would just kind of sit around and do nothing, and then we would probably just stare at the sun and get eaten by some other animal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe.
absolutely. But it's something that I struggle with on a regular basis. And
Yeah,
like one of the biggest motivators, initially, the biggest motivator for me was like wanting more. Like I thought that
yeah.
obtaining these things like money and all these other things was going to give me happiness. So initially, that's what it was. Now it's a fear of losing momentum. Like that's one of the biggest motivators for me right now. Is like I've worked so hard to build up all this momentum to get where I am, and I'm terrified that if I take my foot off the gas pedal, it's all going to go back to nothing. So that's
You know,
that's where I am right now.
no, I get those though. Because I think the wanting more. I think is especially too when you're starting out when you don't have those things. Getting more money, being successful, all that, it adds a lot of value to your life and makes you feel more in control. And I think there is a lot to be said for that. So there's that side of it. But, that'll only take you so far too. And I think the momentum thing is also interesting because, it can be terrifying, feeling like either like, not so much like if you stop, everything will just come crashing right down instantly. Like it'll fall apart very quickly. And I get that too. Yeah, it's a
And
terrifying feeling.
because I've done that previously, like I've built up pretty successful stuff, and then I was like, "Oh, I've made it. Let me just stop here," and then it just all collapsed. And so, like, I don't want that to happen again. I got some PTSD about that.
I think anymore too, man, especially like with things move very quickly nowadays too. And I think it can, like if you sort of deviate or take too long of a break from stuff, it can really fall apart quickly nowadays, which can be very stressful in itself, you know. But it's hard to know too. Like it's just hard sometimes, I think, too, like to you want to get work done, you want to move forward. And it's like, especially when you have like a larger goal, you could theoretically work all day, every day on it. And if it's a large enough goal, you'll be working at it for a long time anyway. So it's like, it's hard to say, like, okay, when did I do enough today? Right. Or when did I do enough this week? What looks like a good week to me? Or what looks like a good day to me? And I think that for me is a big struggle because it's like, if I don't have a clear idea of that, I'll keep pushing myself, but you burn out then, right? Where if you work, if I work till 2 every night, because I get some time, especially at night, it's very easy to work. But then, I get up at 6:30 and it's like, so if I do that too often, I'll burn myself out and then it's worthless.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've talked about this before, how like we used to get bored. Like there used to be not enough to
Yeah.
do. This was pre-technology, pre-email, pre-cell phones. You just get bored, you know?
Yeah.
Nowadays that boredom doesn't exist because anytime you're not actively pursuing something, just mindlessly scrolling through Instagram or Facebook or answering
Yeah.
emails or notifications blowing up your phone all day. So like we don't have that boredom anymore, and we have this constant never-ending buffer. So it feels like we
Yeah.
have to empty that out. Like it should be at zero and it never will be anymore. So like
Yeah.
this urge to constantly keep doing, because we're like, oh, if I do more today, it'll get closer to zero tomorrow, and it never ever does.
That's a good point. I think that is true. Like the wanting to clear all that stuff out, wanting to sort of get it down there, but then it never will. So you're always going to have more to look at or more to do with those notifications and stuff. I do hate that. Email was like, I remember when email first came out, when that first started and got really bad, it was like that, you'd open up, there'd be so many. It's just like, ugh, every day trying to deal with all of them. It is hard. I think, I was just gonna say. On top of that too, I think it's just difficult too to like also sometimes balance everything and manage it so that you can get what you need to done, but also pay attention to the rest of your life. Because I think we get caught up too in focusing on like one very like narrow idea of what progress looks like or what success looks like, right? Where it's usually about like achievements, financial success, things like that. And we do forget about the rest of our lives. And that can be really problematic as well, because even though you might make a lot of gains, you don't really have a whole life, right? And that can leave you wanting in other areas.
Yeah. And that kind of reminds me of an activity that I've done when I've been feeling overwhelmed. It's a two-part activity. So first is figuring out what your goals are. So going back to places in your journal where you've written down your goals, take some time one morning to write down your goals again so that you can kind of get clear on what's important to you. So that's step one. And then step two is write down everything you're up to. Because I
Oh,
guarantee you it's going to be like 60 things.
yeah.
And most of them are not in any like concordance with your goal at all. So that whenever I get feeling overwhelmed and like really burdened by life, I don't have enough time to do all the stuff that I need to do. I do this activity because my goals are very, you know, I've been writing down my goals regularly for many years. And so they're pretty darn clear. Like I know the direction
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
go. But oftentimes I get sidetracked doing all these secondary activities.
Yeah.
And so I have all these things that I'm
Uh,
doing and I never have enough time to do all of them and they don't line up with my goals. And it's totally cool to continue doing them, but I just have to realize that I'm sacrificing my goals to continue doing them. So
yeah.
that's like a
Recognize the
nice
trade-off.
clarity exercise. Yeah.
I like that. That's a good one. It's funny too. I was just thinking about this the other day as well. It's like I have this experience all the time too, where like I'm working on something, or like I have multiple, say, a couple projects or a few projects you're working on, right? And it's like I stress myself out thinking I'm not going to get to the next one, or I'm not going to make enough progress on the next one. And then it's like a week later, I feel totally better because I realize, oh, I was making plenty of progress and it's just fine. But it's like in the moment, does that make sense? Where like you stress out about how fast you're going, or you feel like it should be faster. I don't know. I'm terrible with that. I have a shitty, really terrible conception of how long things should take in my head sometimes. Like where I don't know why. I've never been good at that. Like I always think it should be like quick, and it's not.
I'm pretty sure everybody's in the same
Yeah.
boat where we all think it's going to happen a lot faster and
Yeah.
it's just never happening fast enough. Dude, I'm in the same boat with everything I'm up to right now. I'm like, this should be
Yeah.
happening sooner. Why is it taking me so long? I don't have this much time to do it. And it's like, and then I sit back and I think about it. I'm like, I have my whole entire life to do it. Like, just
Yeah.
ease up just a little bit. It doesn't need to be done immediately.
Well, it's funny too when you really think about it too. It's like if you know, like say, like I don't know, like you're working on something that you think is going to take a year. It's like, well, then a day or a week, like how much progress do you expect to make in that day or week? Like what does that even look like? Because it's such a small portion of the overall percentage of the actual year and your time to work. And I think the when is enough question is also hard too, because I think when we're too focused on that progress, we also don't ever take any breaks. Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure you do too. Like, I work pretty much 7 days a week usually.
Mhm.
I've been trying to be more diligent about giving myself like a whole day. But, like, even when I do that, I still end up doing something for a few hours. Like, it's still hard to not. It's like very difficult.
Dude, I
Yeah.
same boat. So I've been going 7 days a week for like over a year. And actually last month, I was like, I need to take a vacation. So I took a weekend and I took a vacation and I had a panic attack because I didn't know how to stop.
But see,
Yeah.
that's the issue though, right? Because like then you know, it's like, so how do you balance? This is my other worry, right? Is if that's the case, how the hell do you balance the other things in life that are important? I think this is like, I mean, I'm sure this is a struggle everybody must have all the time because it's hard to know. We all want to get to where we imagine ourselves being now. We want it right now. So you want to push to do it. You want to be in that, wherever that sweet spot is, you think, but it's always going to be more challenges and more problems anyway. And it's just, yeah, it's really difficult. That's one of the hardest things too, is like not knowing what to do with yourself when you have time. You give yourself time.
Hmm.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I've read a long time ago that you should schedule your play and then fill in
Yeah,
your
I
work
agree.
around
Yeah.
that. Like schedule your vacations and then fill in your work around that. Because if you don't schedule your vacations, they'll never get done. And that makes me also seem like maybe you need to actually have some activities planned for those vacations, like not
Well,
productive business type activities, but
yeah.
scuba
Well,
diving
that's
or whatever.
something fun that you enjoy. That's usually where like that's when I find that I do my best in enjoying that time is like, if I plan a hike or if I plan to go take pictures or something or whatever, or plan to spend time with somebody, like you set that time aside, it's scheduled in, you know what you're doing. So you're engaged in doing that. You can kind of focus. But if you just kind of like take time off arbitrarily with nothing to do, it's like I think that's the issue because you're too used to doing stuff every day. You don't want to just sit and watch TV all day, or you don't want to just sit and do nothing.
Well, dude, I
It
don't
gets
want to
too
sit and
hard.
watch TV ever because I've rarely ever gotten anything of any benefit watching TV. So it's like, like if I'm not busy working, I think my hobby activities are very related to my work activities. You
Makes
know,
sense. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So
yeah. The
it's
wrong
tough
with
to
that,
take a break.
it's funny too. It's like I feel like too like all my hobby activities too are also trying to learn things as well. Just like I feel like that's all I'm doing all
Hmm.
the time. So it's like I guess that's the other side of it too, because there's always more to learn. There's always more to do, and it's like it's like how do you sort of turn that off? And I think part of the fear is too, though, like you said earlier, like when if you are depressed, right, you're doing nothing. And I think that's the other fear, right? Is that like that comes also from doing nothing, so you want to keep going, and it's like you don't want to lose that momentum. Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, you gotta stay busy, but not too busy. And also like knowing what is busy enough. And clearly it's something that varies from person to person, but I struggle with this on a regular basis where it's like I want to do the best that I can do. And rarely ever do I actually feel like I'm giving 100%. Like whenever I'm doing my
yeah,
utmost, I'm like, well, if I really try, I could do even a little bit more. And so there's always like, well,
yeah.
am I actually giving? And so I figure, yeah, benefit of the doubt, I'm giving most of all that I can. But it's like, when is enough with that as well?
I think one of the hard things is really getting clear on is finding that metric, that way of sort of evaluating and then holding yourself to it. Like I think because maybe that is part of scheduling in that time to take those breaks is that you're also telling yourself that it's okay at this time to do this. It's almost like it's almost setting that block aside, saying this is what this is for. You're making it purposeful still. I think that's part of the fear, right? And it is really hard though. I don't know. It's a very challenging question, and even trying to find a metric can be different for everybody, right? So how to evaluate that is hard. I think going back to your goals is crucial, and maybe having clearer sort of timelines would be good too. But it's
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like I sometimes I try and figure like, am I doing everything that I want to do by the time I die? Like that's because that's a pretty finite metric. It's like I have a
yeah,
certain amount of years here on Earth. I have a certain amount of time to do what I actually want to do. I
yeah,
don't know how long that's going to be, but am I on course to complete everything that I want to do? And so
yeah.
I can, while I can answer yes, on the same hand, I still try and do more.
Though I think that's also like that fear too of though, like, what if there is something else that I need, that I would, because every choice you're making a choice between things, you're saying no to something, and it's like, so you get to that point where like you are accomplishing a lot, and then you're afraid that maybe, oh my God, what if there's something else I need to do? Because I might regret that as well. Yeah,
Dude, okay, so here's a great example. Okay, COVID was like such a great experiment because everything was closed. So like you couldn't go to
it was.
bars, you couldn't go to restaurants, you couldn't go to malls, you couldn't do anything. Everything was closed. So what were your options? You basically stay home. Maybe you could go out for a walk, maybe you could meet somebody outside. But like basically you didn't have much options. And dude, I
No,
was thriving in that because I knew
yeah,
I was stuck at home. I'm learning, I'm working out, I'm improving my life, I'm doing all this stuff. Now that things are open again, it's like I have all these options. I could go to a movie, I could go
yeah.
to a bar, I could meet friends over here, I could go out to dinner. And now it's like everything feels like I feel the fear of missing out of all of that. All this stuff that doesn't really matter that I lived with for a
Yeah.
year or more didn't cause any problems. Now it's like oh, I'm missing out because it's available out there. I could miss something.
Well, that's the other funny thing. I was just talking about this with somebody else too this week. It's that was for me, it was a great year too. I really, and I think probably for a lot of people, it's probably like, very eye opening about who you are as a person and what you really want and all. And it's like, then things are starting to open back up, and do you want to though miss out on everything too? That's the other side of it, right? Because I think there's always that fear where, like, I think part of me would be happy just being by myself, doing work and focusing on that. But like at some point, I think that's also not a good or healthy thing either, totally. So it's like you don't want to, because you want to have like other people and other things in your life, and it's making that time and finding that balance is very difficult. It really is, I think, and I think it's, and maybe, I mean, like maybe it is about scheduling time, like making that time so that like this is what I'm doing with this friend, or we're going to do this, like kind of scheduling it, but giving yourself that balance is so hard.
Okay, so what I'm thinking of is,
all right,
there's that quote that says we always overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in a decade. And so like the last time that I sat down and I really took a look at what I was focusing on and my goals, and then all the stuff that I was doing, I saw that I was doing a ton of stuff, but really I chose 3 things that I was like, if I do these 3 things every day, this day's a success, and those 3 things together probably took about 5 or 6 hours of my day. So if I do those 3 things every day, my day's a success. And I think that's kind of a helpful activity, to look out 10 years. Because if you just look at a year, it's too short-sighted. You're going to assume you can do too much stuff. But if you go out 10 years, that's a lot of time to do this stuff. So 10 years from now, how old are you 10 years from now? Where do you want to be living? Who do you want to be living with? What do you want to be doing for a job? What do you want to be doing for fun? What do you want your life to look like? All of that, visualize that. And then out of that, pick out 3 daily habits you can have that'll get you there, and make those the most important things. And if you get that stuff done in the day, your day's a success. The rest is just cherries on top.
Actually, I really like that too, because it's funny. That's the other funny thing, is that when you look at like a year, does seem like a long time, I think, to a lot of people, but it's really not. And I think I was thinking about, I don't know, this is just me personally, but I think one of the things that we always mistake, I guess, is the time it takes in the beginning to become, sort of develop the skills you need, and how fast you'll progress later in the middle when you have those things developed. And it's like, I think that's one of our biggest stumbling blocks, is we think like, oh, I should be doing this in a year, but really it's like, well, if you're just getting the baseline, the things you need to be able to do it well, or to, whatever you're working on, then really in year probably 2, 3, 4, you'll be really accomplishing a lot. But it's that first year is probably not going to be as much of a success as you think. You're really kind of like course correcting or changing things. Here we think of, obviously like a big change in life or something, but I like that idea though. Yeah, maybe that is it. Maybe we just need to kind of like really sort of use that prioritization, figure out what is the main things I'm interested in, and just focus on that. And then I still think probably schedule time for other things that are outside of that. Maybe that would work. It's a pain in the ass.
Because I can look at area after area in my life where I think it's not happening soon enough. Yeah. And really, I've been working on it for less than a year or 2. So
that's always it, right? It's always the case. It's always everything is like, and it's funny too, because, it's like, I think the other issue is too, it's like you have a project, even if a project that doesn't take that long, like there's also everyday life that gets in the way, or other things come up that you want to do. So it's like, and recognizing that every one of those choices is probably extending out what you're working on a little longer to make it happen, because you're taking time away. And I think it's the biggest frustration in life, right? We only have so much time. Can't do everything.
Yeah. So, and that's a good point, is that we can't do everything. We can only do a fixed supply of things. So kind of looking at it like, if my life, I can only do 1 or 2 things, maybe even 1 thing, what is enough? What's enough for me? Am I already doing it? That's another question that's worthwhile looking at, because like a lot of the classic philosophers always considered uh, death to be of utmost importance. And
Yeah.
like, when Socrates was about to drink the tea, they're like, how can we not preparing for your death? And he's like, I've been preparing my whole life for it. Like, I don't need to do anymore. But it's kind
Yeah.
of looking at your own life, like, are you ready for death? And granted, it probably won't happen soon. Hopefully not. It may. Hopefully you have a long time left. But there's no way to tell. So, like, are you complete in life? Have you done enough? Or are you putting off your life because you think, oh, I can do this in retirement, or I'll do it next year, or something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question too, and trying to kind of get it down to what are those few things that really matter to you. I think it's helpful anyway too, because I think a lot of times when we struggle with these things too, we're getting pulled in too many directions, and I think for a lot of people, it's like that feel of like needing to either, the obligations that are put on you by others and everything, and all of that sort of pressure and stuff from the outside that kind of pulls you in a million different directions and can really slow your progress on what you want. So identifying what you really want and recognizing that you can't do everything, and kind of whittling things down to the point where you're really focused on what you want and starting to kind of really, curate or build that life that's right for you. This is what we all want, right?
Well, it's like you're just saying there, build that life that's right for you. So to
Yeah.
thy own self be true. So you have to be true to
Damn right.
yourself, build your own life. I can tell you from experience, and I
Yeah.
say this on like every episode, I spent the first 35 years of my life pleasing everybody else and
Yeah.
making my life perfect for everybody else. And I became miserable. And then I changed direction and started living a life for me, and life is wonderful.
Yeah, it's a big, it's funny. It's like, and it's so easy to do because it seems, especially, when you're younger and all, it seems right at the time, but then you realize like, oh crap, this isn't really for me.
Everybody tells you,
Yeah.
go to school,
Yeah.
get a good job, get married, buy a house,
Yeah.
go into debt, all this stuff. Everybody tells you, and guess what? Everybody's wrong.
Yeah.
You're
The
the
only
only
person that can
person
really
who's
be
right.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that. That's
Mhm.
good. That's a good point. Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's also too, I think recognizing that it's something, I think it's something you're going to start. I mean, I think it's something everybody who's really focused on trying to live their best life and really interested in doing things and learning more. It's something you're going to struggle with forever too. I think that's just also part of it, is accepting the fact that like that you have to stop sometimes and you can't do everything in a day. That's just it. I think that's like, maybe a big part of it.
So here's another handy hint is a while back I was reading a book on Charlie Munger, who's Warren Buffett's business partner, and a lot of people say he's like the smartest thinker for a long time. Well, he loves reading biographies. So I was like, if this genius is reading biographies, I better start reading biographies. So I've been reading a lot of biographies
Yeah, they're
recently.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the new Will Smith biography is great, and you're reading it now. I've read it, and it's like it's awesome because it, number one, very well written book, awesome story. Everybody knows Will Smith, and he's done incredible things. But also, it goes to show that even though he's accomplished everything that everybody thinks that they want, he still encounters all of the life problems that we encounter. So like, I think it's a really good read for anybody, just to see that like these, if you think money and fame and all these things are going to make you the perfect spouse, are going to make you happy, read the book.
Yeah. It's funny too. I'm glad you mentioned it too, because it's like, I studying philosophy, man. I've read so many books by all these great philosophers, and it's like, it's interesting to see that like, even for all these people that seem to have the answers pretty clear in their heads, it's like those everyday problems we've been struggling with forever. Humanity's always faced them. Every individual faces them. And I think that's important too, because it kind of does take the burden off a little bit, right? It makes you feel like, okay, it's a work in progress, right? You're constantly doing it. It's something you're going to constantly struggle with, but it's better to keep trying to get to that point where you find it than to not try. I think that's an important point as well.
Yeah. And it's also cool to read these type of books where you read about other people's lives, because you start to see that everybody's going through this stuff. And then when you have problems, you can laugh and be like, yeah, of course that's a problem. Like the other day, I was blowing this little thing totally out of proportion. Like it matters. in the grand scheme of my life, it mattered so little, so infinitesimally that pretty much it
Yeah.
didn't matter. But to me, it was like this was like life defining, and I was completely blowing it out of proportion, and it would cause me to be stressed out for like over a week.
Yeah.
And it's just one of these things. It's like really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. And fortunately, I was able to see it during it. I was like, I know this is teeny. I know it doesn't matter, and yet it's stressing me out. This is funny. I just need to laugh about it.
I think that sometimes it's all we can do, right? It's just laugh at ourselves because we have to. Because we get
Mm-hmm.
so worked up about everything. Yeah, I think it's a good point. Yeah, maybe just laugh at yourself. That's a good way to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, and here's another exercise. When is enough? Uh, and another exercise to look at it would be like right now, this is enough.
Yeah.
So like imagine that this is enough. Whatever you're doing right now is enough. Because there's a I mean, what if you can't do anymore? Maybe you can't. Maybe you can,
Never
probably
know.
can, but maybe you can't. So like if this is enough, can you be okay with it? And then how to
Feel-
improve on it if you wanted to.
Well, that's a lot of it too. Is like a lot of what I read too is like getting comfortable with what you have now, seeing that, being grateful for what you have now. I mean, gratitude is always important, right? And like getting to that point where you can kind of be happy with yourself now and see all the other stuff is just kind of like additions or add-ons, but not necessary for the happiness or anything. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I almost just bought a PlayStation 5 the other day. Like
Oh, really?
oh dude, I
You've
haven't
been
bought a
teetering
place
on this, even on this
for
tirade
years. For
for like
years.
3 years. It feels like.
Yeah, because I used to love playing Destiny on PlayStation 4, and I knew the PlayStation 5 was coming out. And I was like, well, before it came out, I was like, maybe I should just get a PlayStation 4. I can play some Destiny. Then PlayStation 5 came out. You couldn't get it anywhere. Now the store
Yeah.
near me finally has PlayStation 5. So I saw it
Wow.
and I was like, oh, I should get it. And then I'm looking at the games and I'm like, there aren't even any games here I want to play. Like,
Yeah.
this is ridiculous. But it's knowing when is enough. And what I wanted to say with that was this around the same time, I started doing this exercise where I just go around my room once a day and look at the things that I have and be grateful for them. Like,
Good exercise.
because Nintendo Switch, totally grateful for it.
Yeah.
Love playing on that thing.
Lots of fun.
Computer, cell phone, weights, all these things, coffee, like these
Yeah.
things that I take for granted every day. But when I stand up and when I just walk around my room and look at these things that I can be grateful for, it very much changes my perspective because I realize how much abundance I already have in my life. And there's not that it changes that wanting more to just being like, wow, there's already so much here.
You know what the other thing too is, I think also, and I did this the other day, was when you're working on something and you feel like it's not progressing fast enough, being grateful that you're even able to work on it, or you're even able to do it. I think, it's like getting that perspective, taking a step back and looking at these things from a standpoint of, you weren't doing it before. And if it's something you really want, you are now. So at least be thankful that you're doing it and you're able to, right? Rather than stressing yourself out about where you're going to be with it. I think that's a good way to think. I think that it is. It's very hard. I think we'll all struggle with this because it's just that it's that kind of like a difficult balance between, always wanting more, always wanting to improve our situation, but also at the same time being aware that our situation's good and what's good in that situation, or what's like going well for ourselves at the time. I think that's important too. It keeps us kind of from getting too off track or too caught up in one direction and losing sight of things.
Yeah, it's partially the journey and destination type of thing, where like
Yeah.
most of the time you're going to be spending on the journey. When you finally get to the destination, yeah, sure, it may be cool, or you may be disappointed, but whatever it is, it's not going to last for very long. So
No.
like we all get caught up in wanting the destination, but it's really the journey that's important. And really, if you're working on things that are important for you, like if you're in the direction of destinations that you want to be, then you're already doing it.
I like that. Yeah, it's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Yeah.
anything else you wanted to mention about when is enough?
No, I think that's good. I think this is enough. Sorry, I might say that.
That was good. That was good. I like that. This is definitely enough. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Existential Stoic Podcast. When is enough? I hope that you're able to find something helpful for yourself so that you too can help determine when is enough. Thank you so much for joining us. If you did enjoy it, check us out on YouTube, also on the podcast services. Like, share, subscribe. We will catch you guys next time. I'm Randy. That's my buddy Danny. I'll see you later, Danny.
Later, Randy.